We were all expecting Tsu Surf to come home earlier this week after completing his federal time tied to the RICO case, but there's been a slight curveball in the process. Surf was officially released from federal custody, only to be transferred to Wayne County, Michigan, to address a separate, long-standing legal matter. According to the available information, Surf, whose real name is Rajon Cox, took a plea deal on carrying a concealed weapon charge stemming from an incident that dates back to 2011, although he wasn't sentenced on this case until March 28, 2024. Under the terms of that plea, he agreed to serve between 1 and 2 years, with the statutory maximum capped at 2 years and 6 months. Since his sentence officially began in March of 2024, we are now approaching the 2-year mark, which would place the furthest possible completion date around September 2026 if he were to serve the maximum time straight through. Without speculating on any earned credits or exact release calculations, this timeline suggests that what remains is likely a matter of months rather than years, which is encouraging news for supporters who are hoping to see him return home sooner rather than later. While Surf would have undoubtedly preferred to come straight home after resolving his federal situation, handling this outstanding state case now eliminates future uncertainty and prevents the possibility of being re-detained later on a detainer. As many people who've dealt with the system understand, not knowing what comes next is often the hardest part. And with this situation being addressed while he's already in custody, it brings him one step closer to finally closing this chapter for good. Free the wave.
Geechie might be calling me right now.
What do you think?
Let me see. Hello? Yeah. Okay. Hello? Yo.
Hey, what y'all got going, man?
We filming part 2 of you and Twerk Face Off Flashback, and we actually, this is a perfect transition.
Crazy.
We're talking about, is caffeine the best shit to happen to battle rap? I said yeah, because it, gave niggas money.
You goddamn right. You supposed to just do it. You supposed to make good moves with it. You know what I'm saying? You supposed to, do different things with it, man. You can't just blow it all in one place. You can't really blame them. That's kind of the same thing that happened with what's that, PPP loans, the EDD loans.
Crazy.
He just said that.
Crazy.
People got some of that, then they didn't do the right shit with it, you know what I'm saying? On the real, they went right back to,
I told him, I said, motherfuckers gave us lemons. You supposed to make lemonade, some lemon pound cake, some motherfucking limeade and lemonade. Don't put all that shit in one picture.
Yeah, cause y'all been, you know what I'm saying? Y'all been there, man, you know what I'm saying? But I don't know, man, y'all been there, man. Nigga appreciate y'all, man. I ain't gonna take up all the time and all that, man, you know what I'm saying? I'm finna make some rounds from here,
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna do some push-ups or something, man, you know what I'm saying? When I get back on camera, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's more than likely that this situation was extremely devastating for Tsu Surf, mentally and emotionally, especially when you're under the impression that you're finally about to come home after serving federal time, only to find out there's another pending matter in a completely different jurisdiction that's now going to prolong your release date. That type of last-minute legal curveball can shift everything overnight. Not only was this a shock to the battle rap community that's been anticipating his return to the stage, but it very well may have been a shock to Surf himself. We're talking about a case stemming from an alleged offense back in 2011 that's only now resulting in consequences years later. Situations like this naturally raise questions about statutes of limitations, because in many cases, there are time limits on when prosecutors can bring charges, depending on the severity and classification of the offense. However, it's important to understand that statutes of limitations can be paused under certain conditions. For example, if a defendant was out of state, had an outstanding warrant, or the case remained unresolved in the system. That means something that might seem too old to prosecute can still be legally actionable years later, depending on procedural history. In other words, just because time has passed doesn't automatically mean the exposure disappears. especially when the case exists in a separate state court system. And that's really the larger takeaway here. Committing offenses outside of your home jurisdiction introduces a whole new layer of legal risk. Different counties, or in this case, a different state altogether, operate on independent timelines, warrant databases, and prosecutorial discretion. A situation you thought was behind you can resurface years later the moment your custodial status changes, exactly like what's playing out now. It's a textbook example of how out-of-state matters can come back around unexpectedly and materially impact your freedom. From a culture standpoint, the absence has been felt. Fans have been vocal about how much they miss Surf's presence, not just his performances, but the competitive energy he brings to the URL stage. There's already anticipation building around who his first matchup will be whenever he's finally able to return, because his re-entry battle is going to carry major narrative weight after everything that's transpired. On a more optimistic note, Geechie Gotti appears to be maintaining strong morale amid his own legal adversity. By all indications, he's staying mentally grounded and not allowing the situation to lower his spirits. While he may have a lengthy legal process ahead of him, that kind of mindset matters, because navigating a complex case often requires endurance, faith in the process, and the discipline to remain upbeat through uncertainty. Maintaining that composure can be critical, especially when outcomes may hinge on sustained legal strategy over time. For now, supporters of both are watching closely, hoping Surf's path clears sooner rather than later, and that Gotti continues approaching his situation with the resilience needed to see it through. The biggest lesson that can be taken from Tsu Surf's situation is understanding that your legal exposure doesn't end just because time has passed, especially when you've had interactions with law enforcement in jurisdictions outside of your own. Moving across state lines while unresolved matters still exist can create a delayed legal trap that doesn't activate until years later. And by that time, you may already believe you've paid your debt to society for everything on your record. This is why it's critically important to avoid criminal activity altogether, but even more so in places that are not your home jurisdiction. Different counties and states operate on completely separate warrant systems, court calendars, and prosecutorial timelines. What might seem like a minor issue at the time can later resurface through an old warrant, deferred sentencing, or tolling of the statute of limitations, and interrupt your life at the worst possible moment, like right when you're expecting to regain your freedom. Surf's situation is a clear, real-world example of how something from over a decade ago can circle back and materially delay your release. From a career standpoint, the culture has definitely felt his absence. Fans have been anxiously waiting for his return, and there's already heavy anticipation surrounding his first battle back, whoever that may be, because it's going to symbolize not just a comeback to battle rap, but overcoming a long legal journey that's kept him off the stage. On the other hand, Geechie Gotti seems to be maintaining a strong and optimistic mindset throughout his own legal challenges. He doesn't sound defeated or discouraged. Instead, he appears mentally prepared for the possibility of a drawn-out case. That kind of emotional resilience is key when you're dealing with legal adversity, because staying grounded, having faith, and keeping your spirits high can make a major difference in how you navigate the process. If he continues approaching the situation with that same upbeat energy and disciplined outlook, there's always the possibility that things could ultimately go in his favor. The overall takeaway here is simple. Unresolved legal issues don't expire on your timeline. They expire on the court's timeline. And the best way to prevent your future from being delayed by your past is to avoid putting yourself in positions that can follow you across jurisdictions in the first place.